The Roloff family's story has always been one of love, struggle, and the dream of building something lasting together. But today, a haunting phrase still lingers in the air, Amy Roloff's voice trembling with emotion as she declared, "You took my home." Those words, spoken during one of the most heartbreaking moments in her journey, have now become symbolic of a deeper divide in the Roloff legacy. Roloff Farms, once the beating heart of the family and the centerpiece of Little People, Big World, has transformed from a place of joy and togetherness into a battlefield of memories, money, and divided loyalties. What was once a sanctuary of childhood laughter, family dinners, and dreams of passing down the farm to future generations now stands at the center of painful choices and bitter debates. At the heart of this conflict are Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler. Their decisions surrounding the farm, from expansions and renovations to the highly controversial sales, have left fans wondering whether Amy's decades of sacrifice, motherhood, and resilience are being overshadowed, if not erased altogether. For over 30 years, Amy poured her soul into the farmhouse. She raised her children there, celebrated birthdays and holidays, and weathered the storms of her marriage before ultimately selling her share to Matt in 2019. Though she has since built a new life with Chris Merrick, fans argue that Matt and Caryn's dominance over the farm feels like a rewriting of history, one that places Caryn at the forefront while Amy's role fades into the background. So the burning question is this: is Amy's history truly being erased in favor of Caryn's presence? And if so, is this the final fracture in the Roloff family story, the moment where legacy and love give way to loss and resentment? Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. For Roloff family latest news update, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. For decades, Roloff Farms was more than just a piece of land. For Amy Roloff, it was the foundation of her life, the stage where her children grew up, and the heart of everything fans came to love on Little People, Big World. From the moment the cameras first captured the Roloff family, Amy was seen working tirelessly, not just as a mother, but as the glue that held the family together. The farmhouse wasn't just a structure of wood and brick. It was the space where Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob took their first steps, celebrated their birthdays, and shared their childhood memories. Holidays in the Roloff household became iconic for viewers. Thanksgiving dinners around the long wooden table, Christmas mornings filled with laughter and wrapping paper scattered across the living room, and pumpkin season celebrations that brought the entire family and thousands of fans to the farm. All of it became synonymous with the Roloff legacy. For Amy, that house symbolized family unity. It wasn't just about acreage or financial value. It was about her life's work as a mother, a wife, and eventually a grandmother. Every corner of that farmhouse held memories that couldn't be replicated anywhere else. That's why her decision to sell her portion of the farm to Matt after their divorce was so painful, not just for her, but for the fans who had grown attached to the home right alongside her. It was never a simple business transaction. It was the final tie to a chapter of her life that was already slipping away. Amy herself admitted in multiple interviews and on the show that she struggled deeply with the choice. Walking away from the farmhouse meant closing the door on more than 2 decades of her story. And for someone who built her identity around family and tradition, that wasn't an easy door to shut. When the sale was finalized, the audience response was immediate. Many fans voiced outrage, claiming Amy had been backed into a corner. On social media and discussion forums, viewers debated whether Amy truly wanted to leave or whether Matt's persistence left her with no other option. Some even described it as Amy being forced out of her own home, pointing to the power imbalance between Matt, who managed the business side of the farm, and Amy, who had always been more emotionally tied to it. To them, it felt as though Amy's history was being erased, her sacrifices overshadowed by Matt's control of the property. For others, it was simply heartbreaking to watch. Fans who had followed Little People, Big World from the very beginning shared their sadness over the sale, recalling the joy of seeing Amy in her kitchen cooking for her kids, or in the yard preparing for pumpkin season. The sale marked the end of an era, not only for Amy but for the audience that had grown up alongside the Roloff children. To this day, many believe that Amy didn't fully want to let go of the farmhouse, but rather, she had no choice if she wanted to move forward with her own life. After Amy Roloff sold her share of Roloff Farms to Matt in the wake of their divorce, the dynamic of the property changed forever. For decades, the farm had represented not just a business, but a family legacy. Holidays, pumpkin season, and memories that fans had grown to love through Little People, Big World. But once Matt gained full control, the farm became something else entirely, a project that he could shape, remodel, and, in some ways, reinvent. Matt has always been the visionary, building treehouses, medieval castles, pirate ships, and even a western town on the property. But now, with Amy gone, there was no one to challenge his ideas or rein in his ambitions. This freedom gave Matt the opportunity to reshape the farm according to his own vision, but it also meant that the farm started drifting further away from the image fans once knew. And standing firmly by Matt's side through this transformation was Caryn Chandler. Over the years, Caryn has gone from being a farm employee to Matt's partner, and now a central figure in the decisions that shape Roloff Farms' future. Her influence is undeniable. Where Amy once balanced Matt's big ideas with practicality, Caryn often seems to encourage them, supporting his new ventures while also bringing her own perspective into play. But this influence has not come without controversy. Many fans argue that Caryn's involvement has changed not just Matt, but the family dynamics themselves. With Caryn's presence, communication between Matt and his children, especially Zach and Jeremy, grew strained. The Roloff siblings had once dreamed of taking over the farm, but now they saw their chances slipping away. Matt and Caryn's plans for the property have only added fuel to the fire. Instead of passing the farmhouse and the land down to one of his children, Matt decided to list a portion of the property for sale at an eye-watering price. When that didn't sell, he explored the idea of renting out the family farmhouse, the very home where Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob grew up, for short-term stays. Fans were stunned. What was once the heart of the Roloff family had suddenly been reduced to a rental, a commodity for outsiders rather than a home for the next generation. And then came the next major shift, Matt and Caryn's dream home. Together, they began making plans to build a brand new residence on the property, a space designed just for them. To some, it seemed like a natural step for a couple ready to begin the next phase of their lives. But to Amy and to many longtime fans, it felt like the ultimate erasure of her presence on the farm. The land that once told the story of her marriage, her children, and her sacrifices was being reshaped into something unrecognizable, centered on Matt and Caryn's future rather than the family's past. Amy has been vocal about her feelings, admitting that watching the changes unfold has been difficult. To her, the farm was never just about land or money, it was about family. And now, with each new plan, each construction project, and each rental listing, she feels her history is being slowly erased from the place she once called home. Fans share that sentiment. Many took to social media to express their disappointment, accusing Matt of prioritizing profit and personal gain over family legacy. Others directed their frustration at Caryn, believing that her influence pushed Matt toward decisions that distanced him from his children and rewrote the Roloff family story. At the heart of this controversy lies a simple, painful question. Is Roloff Farms still the family farm it once was, or has it become Matt and Caryn's personal playground? One of the most unforgettable and heartbreaking moments in Little People, Big World came when Amy Roloff, standing in the very farmhouse where she raised her children, looked at Matt and cried out, "You took my home." Those 4 words carried years of memories, sacrifices, and pain. For Amy, the farmhouse wasn't just a building, it was the heart of her life, a place where she cooked countless family meals, celebrated birthdays, and watched her kids grow up. Losing it felt like losing a part of her identity. This emotional outburst was more than just television drama. It resonated deeply with fans. Viewers who had followed Amy's journey since the very beginning understood what she meant. They had seen her decorate the house for holidays, pour her energy into the family traditions, and fight to keep the Roloff legacy alive. When she said those words, fans weren't just watching a reality show. They were feeling her pain. Social media lit up with comments siding with Amy, calling her the heart of the farm, and expressing anger at Matt for in their eyes, pushing her out. For many, this became a defining turning point in Amy and Matt's relationship. Their divorce had already strained things, but this moment cemented the divide. It wasn't just about paperwork or dividing assets anymore, it was about emotions, legacy, and respect. Amy's anger reflected years of feeling unheard and overshadowed, while Matt's pragmatic approach to the farm made him appear cold and calculating. He often spoke about the land as a business investment, while Amy spoke about it as a home, a sanctuary. The public perception split sharply after this moment. Amy was seen as the emotional core of the family, the mother who had given everything to keep the Roloffs grounded and together. Matt, on the other hand, was cast in the role of the businessman, the one willing to make hard, sometimes heartless, choices to secure what he saw as the farm's future. While some viewers admired his practical mindset, the majority felt he had lost touch with the family values that had made the show special in the first place. What made Amy's anger so powerful is that it highlighted the deeper conflict at the center of the Roloff family story. Was Roloff Farms a business first, or was it a home? For Amy, it was always the latter. Her outcry, "You took my home," wasn't just aimed at Matt. It was aimed at the situation, at the reality that the family she had built was changing in ways she couldn't control. And in that moment, she became the voice of every fan who felt that the heart of little people, big world, was slipping away. Caryn Chandler's presence in the Roloff family story has always carried a certain weight. From the very beginning, viewers struggled with how to place her within the complicated history of Roloff Farms. To some, she's been the supportive partner standing by Matt as he builds his new chapter. To others, she's been seen as the figure who stepped into Amy's space far too quickly, making it seem as though Amy's decades of sacrifice could be swept aside in an instant. When Amy broke down over losing her farmhouse, pouring her heart out with those unforgettable words, "You took my home," the spotlight shifted not just onto Matt but onto Caryn as well. Fans expected compassion, maybe even acknowledgement of Amy's pain. Instead, what they saw was a reaction many described as distant, even cold. Caryn appeared to stay composed, almost detached, as if she wanted to treat the situation as a practical matter rather than an emotional one. That pragmatic stance has become one of Caryn's most defining traits on the show. She doesn't dwell on the past, she focuses on what's ahead. But in moments where emotions are raw and history is heavy, that very approach has made her appear dismissive. When Amy expressed that the farm represented family unity, holidays, and years of raising children, Caryn's body language, calm, arms crossed, matter-of-fact tone, seemed to fans like a refusal to meet Amy where she was emotionally. Critics argue this is the exact point where Caryn and Amy diverge most sharply. Amy has always led with vulnerability. She wears her heart on her sleeve, often breaking into tears as she recalls her decades of investment into the land and her family. Caryn, on the other hand, approaches everything through a pragmatic lens: business decisions, future plans, new projects with Matt. For fans who already saw Caryn as replacing Amy, those cold replies cemented the feeling that Amy's pain was being minimized. It's important to remember, however, that some viewers defend Caryn's position. They argue she wasn't being cold, she was being realistic. In their eyes, Amy was choosing to dwell on the past, while Caryn wanted to move forward with Matt and the farm's new vision. Supporters even point out that Caryn may have intentionally kept her emotions in check to avoid escalating an already heated situation. Still, perception matters. And in the court of public opinion, Caryn's lack of outward empathy stood in stark contrast to Amy's open vulnerability. For many fans, that moment marked a permanent division: Amy as the emotional heart of Roloff Farms, and Caryn as the pragmatic outsider whose words, or lack thereof, felt like a cold dismissal of history. This clash of personalities, Amy's emotional honesty against Caryn's steady pragmatism, continues to fuel debate. Is Caryn truly unsympathetic, or is she simply misunderstood? And more importantly, has her role as Matt's partner overshadowed Amy's legacy in ways that words can never repair? The ripple effects of Amy's emotional departure from the farmhouse and Matt's choice to take over complete control of Roloff Farms are still being felt today. What once began as a painful split between Matt and Amy has gradually grown into a wider fracture, one that now includes their sons, Zach and Jeremy. Zach and Jeremy's fallout with Matt is perhaps the most glaring example of how deep these wounds run. Both boys once dreamed of carrying on the Roloff Farms legacy. Fans will remember that Zach, especially, expressed interest in taking over the property. But negotiations with Matt reportedly broke down, with Zach calling his father's approach manipulative and unfair. Jeremy, on the other hand, quietly stepped away, purchasing his own property after feeling that his dream of inheriting the farm was no longer possible. These decisions have been traced directly back to Amy's painful exit. Fans often connect the dots. If Amy hadn't sold her share to Matt, would the power balance have been different? Would Zach or Jeremy have had a fairer chance at keeping the farm within the family? Some even argue that Amy's continued presence might have encouraged Matt to compromise more, rather than taking full ownership and reshaping the farm in his own image with Caryn by his side. That what-if question haunts longtime viewers. If Amy had stayed, would the Roloffs still feel united today? Or would the same fractures have eventually appeared? For some, Amy's choice to leave wasn't a betrayal, but rather a survival move, a way of protecting her peace after years of feeling unheard. Yet others can't help but wonder whether her departure marked the beginning of the end for Roloff unity. This brings us to a painful truth many fans point out. Amy's legacy, both as a mother and as a central figure in Little People, Big World, feels like it's slowly being erased. With Caryn stepping into a larger role, Amy is no longer portrayed as the matriarch of the family. Instead, she sometimes feels like a guest in the very space she built. The farmhouse where she raised her children, the traditions she started, even the memories of pumpkin season, all are now rebranded under Matt and Caryn's influence. And that erasure doesn't just sting Amy. Fans, too, feel the loss. Little People, Big World has always been more than a show about farming. It's been a story about family. Viewers who grew up with Amy as the emotional anchor now see her sidelined, and for many, it feels like watching the rewriting of history in real time. The Roloff story, once rooted in unity, has transformed into one of division, power struggles, and competing legacies. Looking ahead, the future of the show hangs in the balance. With Zach and Tori stepping back, Jeremy and Audrey living life outside the cameras, and Jacob and Molly uninterested in filming, the narrative increasingly centers on Matt and Caryn. That shift raises big questions. Can Little People, Big World survive without Amy's presence? Will fans continue to tune in if the heart of the story, the family struggles, love, and traditions, has been replaced by property deals and new relationships? For many fans, the answer ties back to Amy's legacy. They believe she was, and still is, the emotional glue that made the Roloffs relatable. Without her central role, the show risks losing the authenticity and warmth that made it a household name. Whether intentional or not, the sidelining of Amy has left viewers with the sense that her decades of sacrifice and love for Roloff Farms are being overshadowed, rewritten by a narrative that now places Caryn at the center of the family's story. In the end, the impact is clear. Amy's pain wasn't just personal. It set off a chain of events that continues to affect her children, her ex-husband, and even the future of the Roloff legacy. And perhaps that's the greatest tragedy of all, that what started as one woman's heartbreak over losing her home has grown into the unraveling of an entire family's bond, leaving fans to ask, was it all worth it? As we come to the end of the story, one thing is crystal clear. Amy Roloff's connection to Roloff Farms has never just been about land, barns, or business. For her, it was about family, traditions, and decades of memories that shaped her children's lives. That's why her emotional words, "You took my home," continue to resonate so strongly with fans. Meanwhile, Matt and Caryn have set out on their own path, reshaping the farm in ways that reflect their vision for the future. To many viewers, however, this shift feels less like progress and more like the rewriting of history. What was once a symbol of unity is now at the center of division, with Amy's role seeming smaller as Caryn's presence grows larger. Fans can't help but feel heartbroken. Roloff Farms was once about togetherness, about holidays, birthdays, and milestones under one roof. Today, it feels more like a battlefield of emotions, where legacy is fought over instead of cherished. And so, the question remains, will Amy ever reclaim her rightful place in the Roloff legacy, or has her chapter already been overwritten by Matt and Caryn's version of the story? With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.